the world, and I've never struggled to find that.
It's not a national shortage then.
No, there's not. And do you know what? Think about why that is. You know, we grow up not really being able to be ourselves until we come. And from that comes an exploration of ourselves and stories, and to find our place in the world, because we're told that what we are isn't mainstream, isn't good enough. You know, we have an overwhelming of shame, as it were. So of course we become actors, and naturally they're people that explore themselves and want to find their place in the world. That is why the acting profession, or indeed performing arts, has so many fabulous gay people in there. And
of which you are one. Andrew Keats, thank you for your time. Award-winning West End theatre director, artistic director at Albion Productions, host of the Show People podcast, talking about how you found yourself, in a sense, after you came out. You mentioned it's a sin. For those who are not aware, Andrew, I know you're across it, but this is the following the lives of young gay males in the early 1980s, as, of course, the HIV and subsequently the AIDS crisis bit. The gay characters played by gay actors, Russell T Davies saying it was the only way to guarantee authentic performances. Mike in Kilburn. What do you reckon, Mike? Good morning.
Good morning to you, Nick. Basically just a short point, but if you extrapolate this thinking across other sexualities, then only lesbians can play lesbian roles, heterosexuals can only play heterosexual roles, and that would mean that gay men can only
bonkers, they're actors, they act.
Gay roles.
They act.
If we listen to what my contributor said, though,
that's the word, isn't it? That's the giveaway.
Homosexual
What is cool?
to fully understand the impact of what HIV and AIDS meant to folk back in the 80s. Do you have a different sense or sensibility about it because you happen to be gay yourself, Mike?
No, I don't. Similarly, if the only people that could perform in a movie about the Holocaust would be Jews. I think actors have to have empathy for the roles that they play, and they have to have a capacity to understand and feel the character and the narrative of whatever it is that they're performing. That's their skill set. If they're unable to do that, then they're
not an actor then, are they?
They're probably in the wrong job. Mike, I think I tend to agree with you, although I take on board what my contributor Andrew Keats said. Mike, thank you. Peter in Staplehurst, which is in Kent. Hey, Peter. Morning.
Hello, Nick. Happy New Normal. Happy New Normal to you. I think the best person who can portray the part that is required should do it. You can't stop an Englishman playing an American because that would be racist. A man playing men playing women. What about pantomimes? Are we going to ban pantomime?
I think, any panto this year. The writer Russell T Davies tells us, I'm casting them to act as a lover or an enemy or someone. They're not there to act gay. This is Mr. Davies, because acting gay is a bunch of codes for performance. It's about authenticity. You wouldn't cast someone able-bodied and put them in a wheelchair. Authenticity is leading.
A disabled person to play a non-disabled or vice versa. The stutterer. You get somebody to have to play Peter Sackler.
Indeed, or might be Peter Davis would say. Thanks, Jim in Lincoln. Jim, on this. Good morning.
Good morning. I find it absolutely bizarre. I mean, that's what acting is. You become
absolutely nail on the head.
That's the role of an actor. Where does it end? I mean, there's plenty of English people in Hollywood that portray Americans. They change their accents. But Gerard Butler, for one, he does a lot of American roles.
Is changing an accent the same as appreciating if you're straight, or vice versa?
Well, again, that's not really the question. That's almost irrelevant, I think, because whether it's an actor,
you tell him, poor old Nick.
Background, whatever it is, if it's a believable portrayal.
Nick's annoyed.
Then they're actors. That's their job.
Everybody seems to be on the same page with this. Jim, thank you. I think I'm probably in accord with you all. Let's take of your calls on that in a moment. Also coming up after the news, we work our way through life in lockdown. Of course, yesterday, this is a series we'll be going through the whole of the week. Yesterday we looked at dreams, and especially dream sleep, or sleep management I should say. Today it's only...
While physical and mental health is the prime concern during a pandemic, the tighter restrictions due to lockdown have significant impact on livelihoods, income too. I'm founder of MoneySavingExpert.com, and I'll be here later with some top tips to try and help.
Here's the other side of the 9:45 LBC News headlines with Simon Conway.
Senior police officer is warning fines are increasingly likely for people who break lockdown rules. Anyone who arrives in the UK from the United Arab Emirates will now need to self-isolate after the country was removed from the travel corridor list. And new figures show retailers suffered their worst annual performance on record in 2020. The weather becoming cold and clear for most, a high of 9 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. The M60 in both directions. 2 lanes are closed between junction 17 at Prestwich and 16 at Pendle. And that's because of those emergency repair works, and there were long delays on the approach. Then also on the M60, clockwise queues at junction 19 at the Middleton Road, and that's following an accident. In Renfrewshire, the M8 very slow eastbound to junction 26 at Hillington, and that's following an accident. In London, the Rotherhithe Tunnel stays closed in both directions, and Lambeth Bridge is closed southbound.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, James O'Brien.
They're big fans of the police until they're the ones that are being policed. Why? Do not adjust your sets. I might pedal to the Prime Minister's defence.
James O'Brien on LBC.
If you wear a reusable face mask which is more than 3 months old and have washed it daily, then for continued protection against free delivery on orders over £50, £4.95 postage applies to all other orders. Rated excellent on Trustpilot.
The Vodafone Big Winter Sale is still on. Save £96 on the Xiaomi Mi 10T Lite. Now only £34 per month plus £29 up front with 6 gigabytes data. Switch to the UK's best because voted by readers and trusted reviews. Ready? Vodafone.
CPI plus 3.9% increase in April, ends 28th of January. Minimum term agreement, credit check and terms apply. Info and award verification at Vodafone UK.
Missed the BPI deadline? Don't worry. Fast Track Reclaim, a claims management company, can check on every credit card, loan and mortgage you've ever had. And with Fast Track Solicitors legal action, you could still claim it back, even after the deadline. Find out. Text yes to 82727. You don't need a claims company to check PI. You can claim through a solicitor of your choice.
Fast Track Reclaim. Text yes to 82727.
We all like our parts covered, especially when someone accidentally walks in.
Oi, I'm in here.
With British Gas Home Care, fortunately, both your parts and labour are covered, which means no unexpected.
Hello, Mum. Yeah, thanks a lot, Mum. Thank you. That's very nice, Mum. Thank you very much. Really? I know. It's amazing, isn't it? How are you today? Is he okay? How are you today? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's good. All right. Well, I'll speak to you at the weekend. All right. All right. See you later. Thanks for the call. Thanks, man. Bye. Bye.
Well, look, this is such a wide divide of what's going on in the nation. We go at one end to the people who are benefiting substantially from the pandemic, those who are in work or sometimes in furlough and who have massively reduced expenses, so are able to save substantially, right to the other end, which is those up to 3 million people who are excluded from any main form of state help, many of whom are dire, with the talk of taking their own lives at the very bottom end. We don't want anyone to do that, but we do need help for those people. I've spoken on the programme before about those issues. Yeah. So this is such a wide divide, it's very difficult to narrow it down into one field. But if I were, I think I'd split it into what people are looking at. Furlough, can I be furloughed is the question. The self-employed scheme, which is available, and number 3 is still on. Payment holidays and universal credit. There'd be the sort of 3 main areas that people are coming back with me on.
How accommodating, how tolerant or understanding would you say banks, credit cards, other financial institutions are being or need to be, Martin?
I actually think they're being pretty good. Now, some of that is because it's the most tightly regulated environment that we have. The FCA has told them what they have to do. That's the financial regulator, and they are following it. But some have gone above and beyond that. So let's just go through what's available right now for people. Payment holidays due to COVID-related finances are still on. Many people are asking me, are they going to bring them back? They're still on. And for most of them, they're on until the 31st of March. So mortgages, cards, loans, car finance. There is, if you are struggling due to COVID,
the bloody
you are
money.
due up to 6 months payment holiday, which is given in 3 month blocks
but you're
automatically.
Not getting away with anything.
Now, I would say only do this if you need
it.
to do it, because the interest still racks up if you take a payment holiday.
Bloody
it just
right.
means you don't have to pay. It's a deferment. It racks up. And while it won't go on your credit file, it can certainly, during the time you're on a payment holiday, stop you getting a new product. So if you're on a mortgage payment holiday and you've got a remortgage due where you're going to try and get a cheaper deal, it's unlikely you're going to be able to get one of those. Now, if you've already had 6 months worth of help, you no longer need to be given a payment holiday. The lender should look at trying to give you what's called tailored support. It could be a whole different range of support to help you get through this, but that doesn't need to be a payment holiday. And once will go on your credit file, so will likely have a longer term impact on your ability to borrow in future, so think very carefully about that. And then there is an urgent warning. Now, in the last round of extensions of payment holidays, the regulator chose not to extend overdrafts. I thought it was a rather strange decision. I'm hearing that technically it's because it was arguably an overreach of its powers in the first place to tell them that they could put a payment holiday on. But your listeners don't care about the technicals. What they care about is the practicals. So, what happened though is they said you no longer need to give COVID-based overdraft support, but some banks are still doing it, and that ends on the 31st of January, so not long left. Lloyds, Halifax, Bank of Scotland and Santander will still offer 3-month-long £500 up to £500 0% overdrafts for those struggling due to COVID. But that ends on the 31st of January unless you extend it. So if you're with one of those banks and you are struggling and you need help, talk to them immediately. those are the main payment holiday help that's out there. There are some others as well in more niche categories, but people, if they go and have a look at my website, they'll be able to read more on that.
That'll all be on moneysavingexpert.com. I want to pick up lastly on what you just said, Martin, and you and I have talked about this now, golly, for the thick end of 12 months. Talking is the key. Even if you're in a bad place, even if you're hoping it will go away, it's not going to get away. Ring your credit card company, ring your bank, and start the dialogue. That seems to be one of the main principles. Is that right, Martin?
Yeah, and if you're struggling further, then speak to one of the non-profit debt counselling agencies, National Debt Line, Citizens Advice Bureau, Step Change. If you're struggling emotionally too, and as you may know, I set up a charity called the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute, which looks at changing policy to do with mental health and money, because the two are so viciously interlinked. Then Christians Against Poverty can give counselling as well. So look at that help. One of the other things I'd be urging people to do at the moment, just a couple of quick other tips people should know. Most people know what furlough is, so I'm not going to give you a long, here's how furlough works. If right now you can't work due to childcare issues, firms are allowed to furlough you for that reason. Now, furlough is at the employer's discretion. I'm not saying they have to, but it is not wrong to ask, and it is not wrong if they do it. If they can't furlough you, you do have a legal right to time off to look after your children if you're homeschooling them, but I'm afraid you don't have a legal right to be paid for it, which is of course a terribly difficult choice right now. If you've been told to shield equally, you've had one of those letters that you need to shield, firms can furlough you for that. If they won't furlough you, again it's discretionary, then you should be entitled to sick pay if you're entitled to sick pay, which does depend on how much you earn, and contractual sick pay depending on what's in your contract. The other big warning I want to give people right now is about the Self-Employed Income Support Scheme, CEASE as it's called, CEASE Grant 3, which closes for applications on the 29th of January. Now this is where you get 80% of 3 months average profits up to a maximum £7,500. Let's
about as much use as a chocolate
The eligibility
teapot.
for this self-employment grant is the same as the other two. Those who are excluded from that are excluded from this. There's nothing I can do about that apart.
God, blimey. Windy.
Was children into the back of the car and drove all the way to Durham while his partner in the passenger seat was actually infected with coronavirus. Is this one of those rare occasions where honesty demands that we give the Prime Minister a break?
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation, this is LBC.
From
Global's newsroom at 10 o'clock. The UK's most senior police officer has condemned what she called the preposterous behaviour of people flagrantly breaking COVID regulations. Dame Cressida Dick says the Met Police is still having to deal with house parties and groups meeting in basements to gamble. She's warned those who flout the rules are increasingly likely to be fined. Policing Minister Kit Malthouse has echoed her message.
We know that the vast majority of people will apply their common sense, see the reasoning behind the rules, recognise the problem that we face in hospitals and elsewhere and comply. And where they don't, sadly, I'm afraid the police will be moving much more quickly towards enforcement.
Forces including North Yorkshire, Norfolk and Suffolk all say they handed out dozens of fines at the weekend. Lockdown breaches included groups meeting up to play football and long drives to the coast. The number of deaths involving coronavirus in a week has reached its highest since May. The Office for National Statistics says a total of 3,144 deaths were registered in England and Wales in the week to New Year's Day, which mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate. Retailers say they suffered their worst annual performance in 2020 since records began. The British Retail Consortium says total sales fell 0.3% for the year. Business commentator Declan Curry says it was driven by the closure of shops.
There was a huge rise in online shopping last year, but that was swamped by the slump in sales on the high street as stores were closed by lockdowns and coronavirus restrictions. Sales of non-food items in physical stores was down by 24%. The consortium says many shops are struggling to survive.
Royal Mail has published a list of 28 areas suffering from limited delivery services as more of its workforce is affected by COVID-19. The Communication Workers Union has called for postal workers to be on the list of people in line to receive COVID vaccinations. Several gorillas have tested positive for the virus at a safari park in San Diego. 8 of the animals that live together are believed to have COVID, and several have been coughing. It's believed to be the first known cases among gorillas in the US and possibly the world. Moonpig has announced plans to float on London's stock market. The move is expected to value the online greetings cards business at more than £1 billion. A short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 17 points at 67.81. The pound buys €1.35 and €1.11. And the weather, mild and cloudy with some rain across southern areas this morning. Showers will become confined to the southwest of England and West Wales. Cold and sunny elsewhere with a high of 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom, I'm Simon Conway.
From the case files of Miss Maureen 118212.
You know, the life of a telephone detective is never dull. 1 minute you might be called by a lady from Luton looking for a lighting shop. The next it might be a gent from Jarrow who just needs a jeweller. Whatever the number you need is Maureen 118212.
Maureen 118212. Calls cost £2.50 per call plus 75p a minute with a minimum 1 minute charge plus your phone company's access charge. This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 10 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Always try at the moment to begin with some good news, although you do worry that you're jinxing things, because I'm going to start every show by saying the vaccination programme is still going well.